we'll see about Noctowl. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. It checked Landorus, and I need a Landorus check desperately. Sorry, Quagsire. I love you. You're not that bad. I shouldn't lump you in with vermin like Sandslash. Rillaboom is the team 8. Every team needs an 8. We hate Amoonguss. We're going to make Amoonguss's life miserable. That's why it's everything you can possibly imagine. Every object that's in your field of view right now destroys Volbeat. But the Phantom Kingambit haunted me nonetheless. Or you can die and go into something that beats Landorus. We've assembled a crack team of the most ethical retarders you will ever see. We're going to send them into heaven, and they're going to report back on their findings. I spent a week studying for one game, way overboard, but that's the fun of it. So this is a recap of how it went, what was going through my brain, the detailed thoughts. It's got everything. We're going to go way too in-depth. But you can't stop me, because if you're watching this, it's already happened. There are many obstacles that stand in the way of us achieving true, excellent rat status. There are 8 weeks of games, and then a playoff season. Now, we only qualify for the playoffs if we are in the top 50% of points. So, we could lose at any time. But we have at least 8 weeks of games. I'll go over each of the teams we're fighting. So, first, our team, the Ethical Retarders, in all of their grassy glory. In week 1, we have the Slight Shockers, featuring Landorus-I and Amoonguss. In week 2, we have the Bouffalont Bills, with a Hazard team with Golden Go and Tinglu. In week 3, we have the Long Island Lucarios, who stole my Heatran, and I'll get them back. In week 4, we have the Texan Trappers, the favourites, with a terrifying Sun team. In week 5, we have the Tennessee Titans, with an interesting Iron Valiant team. In week 6, we have Arsenal, which has Darkrai and Latias as its sweepers. In week 7, we have the Brisbane Pyroars, which is doing a Dragapult terrifying thing. And in week 8, we have the Rose Raiders, with Latios and some Regenerator Pokemon. If we can beat all of them, we'll make it to the playoffs. But first, we have to get through the Slight Shockers. They're our first matchup. They're what the video's about. And their team is Amoonguss, Landorus, Quillfish, Quagsire, Annihilape, Ninetales Alola, Arcanine Hisui, Kingambit, Sandslash, and Noctowl. We can play out their defenses and see what they look like. We'll add the Pokemon in one by one. Amoonguss, Landorus, Quillfish, Quagsire, Annihilape, Ninetales, Arcanine, Kingambit, Sandslash, Noctowl. What do we see from this? Well, they have stacked resistances on Fighting, Poison, and Bug. We're not getting through with any of those types, which is unfortunate for my Sneasler. They have no major glaring weaknesses. Psychic is looking pretty strong against them. They've got 3 weaknesses and only 1 immunity. Water doesn't look too bad. But, I don't know, I think their team is pretty well-rounded overall. They've got a bunch of types they don't have any weaknesses to. Bug, again, Dragon, Dark. And, yeah, I think that they've done a really good job at constructing a team with a strong defensive profile. If we compare that to my team, with Sneasler, Rillaboom, Ursaluna, Hatterene, Ogerpon, Mandibuzz, Lantern, Comfey, Gogoat, and Volbeat, well, it's night and day. My team is not well-rounded. Look at that Ice and Flying column. I have so many weaknesses to Ice and Flying, and not a good way to deal with them. Poison is only slightly better, 2 resistances and 5 weaknesses. I mean, those types don't look good. Fire's looking dodgy. Fire's not so bad. It's really Ice, Flying, and Poison. On the plus side, I have some matchups I do great at. Ground, Water, Grass, and Electric, don't bother. But, I mean, it's not as good as my opponent. But I've got synergies to make up. These are just the general relationships. I'm going to be exploring this type chart in detail in this video. So if it looks like a lot right now, you'll get used to it over the next however long this is, 7 hours or something. Speed tiers for the battle. Coming in at last place, Hatterene. It's terribly slow, which makes it a good Trick Room user, but it will not be outspeeding anything unless I give it a Choice Scarf and max speed, which I won't do, because even then it will only outspeed the slowest fellows. Coming in second, third, and fourth slowest are Amoonguss, Quagsire, and Kingambit on the enemy team, and they cover a fairly wide range of speed, but I don't have anything else that slow. If I want to do Trick Room, there might be a problem, but none of these guys are directly going to stop Trick Room. The Quagsire and Amoonguss will take a hit and deal their thing back, whatever it is anyway, and Kingambit has Sucker Punch. Next up is Ursaluna, so it's 2 speed faster than Kingambit, which means they can speed creep each other. I probably do want to outspeed the Kingambit so that I can hit it with an Earth Power, but I don't want to invest too much in speed. I don't think they're going to invest too much in speed, but there is a mind game at play. We jump up 13 speed to Sandslash, and it's a Sandslash. I'm not too scared of it. For me, both of my Terra captains are at the 67-68 benchmark. Middling to slow, slower than most of the offensive Pokemon on the enemy's team. And because they're so close together, they're kind of easy to EV around, but they do different jobs on my team. Then they're Noctowl, and then a whole bunch of guys in the 80 to 85 range. So for me, it's Mandibuzz, Volbeat, and Rillaboom. Volbeat is clicking Prankster moves, so it's basically got priority anyway. But Mandibuzz and Rillaboom are quite important because they both are pivots, so they're both going to be U-turning. Sometimes I want that to be slow. For Mandibuzz, I probably do want it to be slow. And for Rillaboom, I probably want it to be faster. But there's a lot of modification that I can do based on who I'm fighting. And then Quillfish. Speed ties with my Rillaboom. So they're both pivots. They both hit each other really hard. So managing this speed tie is going to be quite important. Next up, we have Arcanine and Annihilate. These are the big physical damage dealers on the enemy's team. And they're at that 90 speed. So the classic, it's fast, but it's not outspeeding a base 100. These are the guys that the enemy might choose to Choice Scarf. The Choice Scarf Annihilate is definitely a thing in the VGC, and you can probably use it in singles too. It's just banned on OU ladder. I suspect you want Choice banned on your Arcanine because it makes it do so much damage. But you could run Scarf if you want. It's got extreme speed too, so you probably don't need a Choice Scarf. But it's worth considering, keeping in the back of my mind. And now we go up to the 100 plus. So I have Comfey. Comfey, like Volbeat, is clicking priority moves a lot of the time. It's clicking Draining Kiss, it's clicking Giga Drain. And I probably would prefer to invest in its bulk to make it able to take a hit while I set it up with Calm Mind, rather than its speed, if it's going to be clicking priority moves anyway. But it is interesting to know that if I want to, I can outspeed Annihilate with it. And then we come to the opponent's really fast threats. So Landorus Incarnate and Ninetales Alola. These are the ones that are going to be trying to speed crit me. Landorus Incarnate can also run Scarf if it really wants to, but I think it wants Life Orb. Like, it's so hard to turn away a Life Orb on this Pokemon. And then finally, at the top of the speed tiers, my Ogerpon and my Sneasler. With Unburden, my Sneasler has as much speed as anyone can possibly imagine, but even without it, it's the fastest thing on the field, so maybe I just don't need Unburden. And then Ogerpon outspeeds Ninetales by 1 base speed, which is really nice, because I can hit it with an Ivy Cudgel before it can respond. And Encore it into something before it can respond. So I'm probably running Jolly Max speed on the Ogerpon just to ensure I can Encore it into Aurora Veil, kill it before it can fail. Okay, so overall, in terms of speed, I'm pretty happy. I think that my fast things outspeed their fast things. My slow things outspeed their slow things. And the middle gives me a lot of flexibility. I'm Probably not running Trick Room here. I think Hatterene's just going to have to take BL and click Psychic, because Ursaluna's not quite slow enough to do what I want it to do, I think. Especially if they try to get into a mind game and underspeed me by reducing their own speed EVs. But we'll see as we move into the later days. So for day 2, I'm going to go over each Pokemon in the enemy's team one by one, and briefly discuss how I'm viewing them and what kind of prep I think I need to do. So to begin with, first Pokemon is a Moongus, and it's a defensive grass type. The things I'm scared about from Moongus is obviously Spore. Spore is really, really scary. I would love to be able to switch Sneasler into this because it resists grass and poison, but it'll just get spored every time. And a spored Sneasler is barely a Sneasler at all. It also has a bunch of tools to deal with my offense. So Regenerator to keep it healthy, and Clear Smog to stop me doing any crazy setup nonsense with my slower Pokemon. Weaknesses? Well, I do have ways to stop Spore. Sleep Claws, of course. If I get one Pokemon asleep who I don't need, I can use the other Pokemon with impunity. But also Overcoat from Mandibuzz makes Mandibuzz immune to Spore, which is really nice. And I have grass types, and they're immune to Spore. So, although Spore is really good, I do have a lot of counterplay. Another weakness is Steel types, immune to poison, resist grass. I don't have any, but I do have a Go-Goat which can turn Steel. And it turns Steel with Sap Sipper, making it immune to grass and poison and Spore. It may be the case that if I send in a Terra Steel Go-Goat, a Moongus can't touch it, and if it can, it will be with a really weak move like Foul Play. I expect it to hold Rocky Helmet, Leftovers, Heavy Duty Boots, anything that a tank Pokemon could be expected to use. Okay, so how does it match up typing-wise? Well, if we look at Grass and Poison, Grass coverage against my team is really bad. It does let it hit Ursaluna, so I can imagine Giga Drain being good just for hitting Ursaluna, and Lantern to an extent. But for everything else, you want Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb is so strong against my team. I have 3 grass types, I have 2 fairy types. Ursaluna resists it, but you can hit it with grass type move. And Sneasler is your problem, but I guess you hit that with Spore. So, good, just beats Lantern, Hatterene, and Comfey. Beats with prediction is what this lightning bolt symbol means. So these Pokemon can switch in to a poison move or a grass move, but they'll take super effective damage from the other one. So it's beats, but there's a bit of subtlety there. Equal to these two, so it can hit them neutrally, but it can't hit them super effectively. And then it can't hit Sneasler super effectively with anything. How does coverage change it? Well, it gets Ghost and Dark coverage. Hex and Foul Play, so not the strongest, unless they try to set up a physical attacker into Foul Play. So I don't really expect the coverage to come into play, and I predict the set to look something like this. Sludge Bomb, Giga Drain, Clear Smog, Spore, with the Rocky Helmet. I think the Rocky Helmet is just really good. It deals with my Rillaboom incredibly well. This thing can just switch into Rillaboom over and over and chip it down. It deals with Sneasler, and it's just really annoying. It can chip Lantern and Mandibuzz when they try to pivot. Is there another option? Well, I don't see it being very likely, but you could run some straight offensive Amoonguss because my team's so weak to poison, and just go for those big damage Sludge Bombs. I think with this you can guarantee a kill on Hatterene in one hit, which is nice because there may be times when I intend to switch Hatterene in. But I don't think it's likely my opponent will do this because the Rocky Helmet set looks so strong. Overall, I'm giving Amoonguss an 8 out of 10 threat score. The poison typing is just an Achilles heel of my team. My team has like 6 legs and they all have an Achilles heel. Poison's one of the 6 legs. Next up, Landorus-I. So it's a special breaker, a special sweeper. What does it do? Well, it does Sheer Force Life Orb. So any move it has that has a secondary effect is going to go insane, and it won't even take Life Orb chip. Moreover, one of those moves is Sludge Wave, which, as I said with the Moongus, is a poison type move and just annihilates my team. So I'm very, very unhappy about Landorus Incarnate. It beats Sneasler pretty well, too. It resists both of Sneasler's stab moves, and it hits it super effectively with Earthquake. And with a flying type stab too, but it doesn't have any flying type stab. Which brings me to its weaknesses. No reliable flying type stab. The only move it gets that could even be considered flying type stab is Fly, physical move, which is terrible for like 6 reasons. You forecast what you're going to do, it doesn't have a secondary effect so you don't get the life orb boost, you forecast what you're going to do, it's real bad. Now it's weak to ice types and it's weak to special walls. I don't have an ice type. The only ice type coverage move I even get is Ice Beam on Lantern, which is weak to ground, and special walls. Now I put a sad face here, because I thought I don't really have a special wall, but actually Mandibuzz does pretty well. It's immune to Earth Power and neutral to Sludge Wave, so the only weakness I really have to exploit is that it can't kill Mandibuzz that easily. Expected items, maybe Life Orb, possibly Life Orb, otherwise it'll be Life Orb. If it's not Life Orb, it's probably Choice Scarf, but I don't see that being very likely. Okay, now, typing. So it doesn't have reliable flying stab, so I'm only worried about ground. And ground is not that good against my team. It does beat Sneasler and Lantern, but I've got all these grass types and Volbeat. And Mandibuzz. So ground alone isn't doing much, but it's beating those two, neutral to those guys, doesn't do anything to those guys. But Landorus has a very colourful coverage pool. Some of these are physical moves, some of them are special. I suspect the special is going to be stronger. Typically, in non-draft settings, runs the special moveset. But we'll consider them all and see if anything comes up. So Poison. If we look at Poison, it covers 5 of the Pokemon that Landorus can't hit, including 2 of the resistances. This move is just amazing. Sludge Wave. I expect Landorus to just click Sludge Wave every time it comes in because it's so good against my team. There's rock options too for the physical guy. Beats the other 2 resistances and still beats the Ogerpon. I don't think it's as good as Sludge Wave, but the physical Landorus does have legs too because of the rock coverage. And then there's Grass Knot. And this is for destroying Ursaluna. Ursaluna is very, very heavy. Grass Knot will do a bajillion damage to it. Doesn't get the sheer force boost, but it doesn't need it to kill Ursaluna. It's kind of fake against Lantern, because Lantern is so light it only has 40 base power. But against Ursaluna, this thing will nail it. And we can see that with coverage, Landorus can deal with all of the resistances and neutralities that my team has. Which is scary, which is threatening. But this is their most expensive Pokemon, so it should be threatening. So here's the kind of set I expect. Nasty Plot, Life Orb, 3 special moves. Probably those 3. Maybe there's a physical thing with Sword Stance instead. It's the same set, but we've switched out Earth Power for Earthquake, and then taken physical coverage. Now, Earthquake is really bad on grassy terrain. Its power is halved. So I just don't think this is likely. I think it's going to be the special one. Overall, I give it a 9 out of 10 threat score. There are worse Pokemon for my team, but this guy is pretty bad. Okay. Third, Quillfish. It's a pivot and a spiker. So it clicks spikes a bunch of times. It comes in with Intimidate, and then it leaves with Flip Turn. What does it do? Well, it's pretty bulky with Eviolite. And we can EV it, they can EV it, to be really reliable at switching into physical attacks. Intimidate, Violate. It does hazards, which my team doesn't like, and their team, all teams, like to have. And it's got Poison Stab, which my team doesn't like, because Poison is really good against me. Weaknesses, it's just a random guy. Wait. If Violate doesn't work on this thing, does it? Because it's only Hisuian Quillfish that evolve. Never mind. Scratch this. I think this Pokemon is bad. Isn't this just bad? I guess we're running boots or leftovers. Yikes. Okay, well, it's not weak to knock off because it's not good. It only gets Pain Split for recovery. It's not running Violate because it's bad. Okay. How's its typing though? Its typing is pretty good. It beats 3 guys. It beats 3 guys with prediction, and it's neutral to 4 guys. It gets dark coverage, but it's not that likely. And the moveset's going to look something like this. A pivot move, a damaging move, a hazard move, and something else. Could be Pain Split, could be Haze. As for weird tech options, well, it can do Destiny Bond, it can do Taunt. It's got a lot of kind of niche utility moves. Overall threat score, I said 6. I'm dropping it down to 5 because without a Violate, it seems kind of useless. Sorry, Quillfish. You are funny. I don't know why you have lips, but I didn't make you. Okay, Quagsire. Quagsire, we all know Quagsire. Look at him. The most jolly fellow in all the ponds. What does he do? Well, he has Unaware, so you can't sit up on him. He has Hazards, he has Recover. And interestingly, he's immune to both of Lantern's stabs, which includes both of its pivot options. So it basically just shuts down Lantern completely. If I bring Lantern, they can switch this in every time, and I can't do anything to it at all. Weaknesses, Grass. Hooray, something weak to Grass. So I can click any Grass move with any of my Grass types, and it will explode. It's also passive, so it's slow. It can toxic things, but it's not going to be able to shut things down straight away. And if something can just hit it hard enough, it will just fold, because its base stats aren't that good. It's really riding that typing and abilities to make it as good as it is. Infamously, make it Chexation. Expected items, same. Tanky items, defensive items. How's the typing? Well, it has 2 Pokemon that it just beats. Importantly, these are kind of my 2 best guys, my main physical and my main special attacker. 1 more Lantern that it beats with prediction, but the caveat for this is that Lantern cannot do anything back to it, so it actually just annihilates Lantern. 5 Pokemon that it can do neutral damage to with 1 of its stabs, and then the grass types, which Quagsire is doomed against. Okay, and then it has some coverage moves. Ice is the most likely one to be good because I have so many ice weaknesses and only Lantern as a resistance. Quagsire is not that strong, so an Ice Beam is not that worrying, but if it is carrying coverage, it'll probably be ice coverage. Rock's the other option to hit some of these fellows, but I don't think it's very likely. So here's the set I expect. Stealth Rock, Recover, Toxic, Earthquake. I think that in all likelihood, this is what they'll go with. It's good, it gives them a lot of utility, and they can EV it to be specially defensive or physically defensive. Just depends who they're wanting to check. My grass types are all physical, so I suspect it'll want the special to deal with Ursaluna and Hatterene. But there's room for kind of manipulation there, especially with Terra. Other things you can do, well, you could do a Rindo Berry and prank my grass type, probably tank 1 grass type move, if you're lucky. I mean, it's still double effective. And it's got these extra utility moves too. It also has Haze, it's got Encore, but I think that's what Quillfish wants to be doing. I don't think you need Quagsire doing it. Overall, it's a good Pokemon, but it's really bad against my team. I've got way too many grass types. The only saving grace is how much it screws Lantern over. But I don't have to bring Lantern, so... Okay, Annihilate. Annihilate is a really, really interesting Pokemon that I don't have much experience with because we only got to use it for a little while before it got banned in Scarlet Violet Smogon. What does it do? Well, it actually does quite a few things. It does bulk up, you can do a Final Gambit set, but the main thing it does is Rage Fist. Rage Fist is an insane move. All they have to do is switch it into a few U-turns, and then they're hitting 150, 200 power ghost type damage. Ridiculous Pokemon, especially behind Aurora Veil. It does have weaknesses though. It doesn't like passive damage. If I can get a Toxic on it, or get Hazards up, it really, really cripples it. I remember with Terra, you could Terra it into a bunch of things to avoid status, deal with status in different ways. Here, it's stuck with its type, which is really good. I mean, the stab type is amazing, but it's got some problems. And then I can Trick it or I can Encore it. If I can hit those two moves at the right time, I can shut it down. If it tries to bulk up, and I can Encore it into bulk up, or I can Trick it into bulk up, it loses its punch. That's a bit finicky though, and it relies on good play, so there's problems. I actually like the Lumberry a lot on it, because I have lots of ways of applying status, and if it can avoid that, I think it's in a really good spot. The Scarf is scary, but Leftovers is the most likely. Okay, typing. Fighting Ghost is known to be an insane typing, and it shows here. So nothing that it can beat every time without having to predict, because Hatterene can switch in on a fighting type move, and Ursaluna can switch in on a ghost type move, but they're both weak to the other option. So Annihilate's still coming out ahead. And then everything else it can hit neutrally. There's nothing on my team that can resist both of its stabs, which is scary. As for coverage, well, it does have some variety in its move pool. It's got the elemental punches, it's got a bunch of other stuff. I think that the ice is possible. So Ice Punch isn't the strongest move, but it does let it hit both of my grass types. It might be worth considering. Then there's Rock. So I think this is Stone Edge. Hits 3 of my remaining Pokemon. Pretty scary. Accuracy is a bit annoying. And you get to a certain point with Annihilate where Rage Fist is just stronger than anything else, even if the other moves are super effective. It's also got Gunk Shot, and Gunk Shot I think is perhaps the scariest of all. It's killing my grasses and my fairies. I'm not sure if it brings a coverage move, but I think if it does, it brings Gunk Shot. And it's got Seed Bomb too, for some reason. I don't even know why this thing gets Seed Bomb, but it's only for Lantern. It's pretty bad. Okay, so what does it do? Well, typically it bulks up with Taunt, so it can do it in front of something, come in and taunt something, and then bulk up. And then it heals back with Drain Punch, and it just blows things up with Rage Fist. Could do a Final Gambit set. Final Gambit with like big damage, Gunk Shot, close combat. It's not bad, but I think that the bulk up set is just so scary. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 overall. Okay, next, Ninetales Alola. This thing is a support Pokemon. It sets Aurora Veil and Snow, but they don't have very many Snow synergies. They've just got synergies for the Veil. So, what does it do? Well, Veil. That's 7 turns after the first turn of half damage from all sources. Sounds pretty good to me. Blizzard is also scary. I mean, it's a strong move with 100% accuracy in the snow, and my team is weak to ice. The last thing is Hypnosis. So I know that Ninetales often runs Hypnosis these days, even though it's RNG, because either you miss and die, or you hit and maybe you just win because you've something to sleep. But the RNG in a best of one is just so hard to go for. I don't know if I have the bravery to go for it, but it is an option for my opponent. Weaknesses. Well, Sneasler can deal with it pretty well. I can get around Sash with Fake Out, and I can hit it specifically with Dire Claw. The other problem is it's not that good on its own. Like it's kind of, it's always going to be lacking something. It's either too frail, or it's too weak, or it's too slow. I don't think you can like have your cake and eat it too with Ninetales. And I can run Brick Break if I'm really worried about screens. A lot of my Pokemon learn Brick Break. It's just a bad move in almost every case. What do I think it'll hold? Well, basically Light Clay or Focus Sash. Maybe you want to guarantee the Veil even if it's shorter. I think you probably just want to extend it though, because the Veil is really good. How's its typing? Well, turns out, pretty good against my team. Ice Fairy beats half my team, and the other half hits neutrally. The coverage is really, really hard for me to deal with. I'm lucky that this isn't their main sweeper, because if it was, I would have a really hard time switching anything in. It's got coverage too. It can run Psychic to nail Sneasler. Sneasler's 4 times weak to Psychic. And if Sneasler's my answer, but it can just run Psyshock, maybe it's a really scary offensive threat, but it's just in Ninetales. Like, I just don't know if it has the offensive juice. And it can run Ghost Hit Hatterene, but I don't think that's very likely. As for sets, well, there's the Light Clay Slit. There's also like a Nasty Plot option that you click Nasty Plot and you just try to win. You say, screw Veil. I'm just going to sweep with this Pokemon, which is really well matched against their team. But I think I have too much counterplay to this. Like, it's not quite fast enough, and it's not quite strong enough. But if it gets going, it is scary. But I can probably revenge kill it with Sneasler. Yeah, I think the Nasty Plot set is like 90% there to being really good, but without that 10%, it can't get over the line. Overall, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10, mostly because of the typing and because of Aurora Veil. I don't see it sweeping my team. Okay, Arcanine Hisui. It's a wall breaker. It's going to click Rockhead recoil moves and destroy my life. Flare Blitz plus Head Smash is nasty coverage that'll hit just about any team where it hurts. It's also got extreme speed to revenge kill stuff. I'm quite afraid of this Pokemon, especially it's a fire type. What's it weak to? Well, you're kind of forced into this prediction game. Like all choice Pokemon, you're forced into this prediction game, but I think it's especially impactful on this thing because its defensive type is so sketchy. Like 2 quadruple weaknesses to common types. You're not going to have many opportunities to like click a move, get the prediction wrong, but still come out on top. If you get it wrong, you probably have to leave. So, yeah, but maybe they're just really good at predicting, and I just get annihilated by Flare Blitzes. You can do a boot set. I know you can do like a Morning Sun thing as well. But the Choice Band just looks so strong. So if we look at its coverage, I mean, it's hitting half my team super effectively, the other half neutrally. Same story as Ninetales, but this guy is much more threatening. It can run Iron Head if it wants to hit my fairies, and it can run Psychic Fangs, which is actually pretty good to hit my Sneasler. I am afraid. And it can run Close Combat to hit Ursaluna. The only thing it can't hit super effectively is Lantern, and Lantern just melts to Head Smashes anyway. It melts to Flare Blitz. I think 2 Flare Blitzes KOs Lantern unless I really invest it in physical bulk. Okay, so there's my predicted set. Pretty straightforward. Weird tech options, yeah, we've got this defensive Will-O-Wisp Morning Sun thing, which is strong, but I think the Choice Band set is better. 8 out of 10 though. I mean, I don't like the thought of switching into this. Okay, coming to the end, last few. King Gambit. Late game cleaner, it's kind of doing a similar thing to Annihilate. It's going to set up and hit you with a crazy move. In King Gambit's case, it's Swords Dance plus Sucker Punch with the damage boost. In King Gambit's case, it's SD Sucker Punch with the Supreme Overlord boost. So we're waiting till most of our Pokemon are dead, and then we're clicking Sucker Punch 6 times and reverse sweeping. It also just has a strong aura. Look at this man. You don't want to mess with him. He's worrying. Okay, what's it weak to? Well, mostly fighting type moves. If Sneasler comes in and clicks Close Combat, there's no world in which King Gambit is ever going to survive. It's also got this mind game dependency with Sucker Punch and SD. But it's usually in the King Gambit player's favour, it's just not guaranteed, so there's some room for manoeuvring. It's got a lot of items it can run. There's more than this even. It likes Air Balloon to dodge ground type moves. It likes the general items, Leftovers, Heavy Duty Boots. It likes a few different type resist berries, ground fighting. It likes Lumberry. It's got a lot of options. Typing wise, well, it's a steel type, which gives it that amazing defensive profile. Offensively, though, it's fine. It's hitting my fairy super effectively, and everything else neutrally. It's fine, but it doesn't have very good super effective coverage. But the neutral is okay. If it gets 2 Swords Dances, neutral is still going to one-shot. Coverage-wise, well, it gets poison, and we've seen how good poison is against my team. That applies here too. Fighting, too, gets low kick, so it can low kick the Ursaluna. It would flip the Ursaluna matchup with low kick, but King Gambit has a lot of moves at once. But it does run low kick sometimes in non-draft formats, so it's definitely worth considering, worth scouting for in the game. Rock, I can run Stone Edge from Mandibuzz, but I don't think it's very likely. I would rather just Swords Dance and power through with neutral damage. So, set something like that. Swords Dance and 3 attacks. Tech options, yeah, I don't know, it's got coverage, but I think pretty much every set is going to look like this. Swords Dance and some attacks. The item is very, very flexible, though. Overall, I'm giving it a 5 out of 10, mostly because it's weak to Ursaluna and Sneasler, my 2 main guys. So it's going to find it hard to find an opportunity. Like, if the opponent has to eliminate those 2 Pokemon, then they kind of have to win the game, because I'm not going to let those Pokemon die first. Okay, now we get to the kind of trash picks. We'll speed through. Sandslash is a spinner. It rapid spins. Its weaknesses are its terrible stats, all the grass types on my team, and its general weakness. It could hold a whole bunch of items. Coverage-wise, it's pretty bad. I mean, I've got 4 things that resist it. Ground is not a problem for my team. If it's taking coverage, it's clicking poison. I think its best move is Gunk Shot, and it can just click, maybe even Choice Band a Gunk Shot. And that's probably all it can do. It does have coverage, but it's so weak. So it probably runs Rapid Spin, Stealth Rock, and then some other things, Gunk Shot, whatever. It's just not very threatening. I'm giving it a 1 out of 10 on the threat score. And finally, Noctowl. Now, unlike Sandslash, I do want to give some respect to Noctowl. It's got options, right? It gives him Defog, which he needs because his team is weak against hazards. It can tear it into a bunch of stuff. It can Calm Mind. The weaknesses are, it's a Route 1 bird from Gen 2, so a small gust of wind will probably obliterate it. Also, if a petty insult, so if you say something a bit rude about it, it might just explode from grief. And the working class. So Noctowl, as you can see, is a member of the bourgeoisie, and it struggles to deal with the common man, is what I'll say. What will it have? Well, boots for dealing with hazards, choice specs for dealing damage. The thing is, its typing is really good against my team. 5 super effective, 5 neutral. It can tear it into fighting to hit Ursaluna. That's okay. It can take Shadow Ball to hit Hatterene. And it can take Moonblast to hit Mandibuzz. What do I think it's going to do? Well, I think it's going to either be a Defogger with Roost and some kind of thing. I like Terra Blast on it because you get the normal stab before you Terra, and then whatever you turn into. I think its options are fighting or psychic after you Terra. Weird things it can do, well, there's a world where it Calm Minds, and there's a world where it runs Choice Specs. And in both of those cases, it's actually quite scary because my team is so weak to flying. We'll see about Noctowl. I give it a 4 out of 10. Although it's got those weaknesses, it does have enough upsides to justify them, I think. A great and terrible tragedy has just befallen me. I've lost an hour and 10 minutes of audio, which means I'm doing this for the second time. So if you get a sense of deja vu, then you're me, because you haven't seen the first time, but I've done this all already. Nonetheless, the show must go on, and we're picking up where my audio cut last time, that you didn't see, with the rankings of the enemy team. So, in last place, Sandslash, I give it a 1. It's not really doing anything, it's weak to grass. They're not going to bring it. Quagsire, I give a 3. It's pretty bad, but it does shut Lantern down really hard. That's enough for me to give it a couple of points, because it's a major deterrent of me even considering Lantern. If I bring Lantern and they bring Quagsire, I'm basically down a Pokemon. Lanterns can't do anything at all. Noctowl I'm giving a 4, so it's pretty good. It is flying, and my team hates flying types. It has options too. They need hazard control, and they don't have a better option than Noctowl. Sandslash is certainly not going to do it. The problem is it's a Noctowl, as we said, and it's got low base stats, and it's weak. But I do think it has some potential, and I think if you've drafted Noctowl, if you're ever going to bring it, it's against a team like mine that's packed full of grass types for it to eat. In 5, I'm doing King Gambit. This might be too low. King Gambit is very strong. It's just that it's weak to my 2 best Pokemon. And that's a pretty major deterrent. I think no matter how bulky and powerful King Gambit is, Sneasler's Close Combat kills it just the same. Coming in with 6 points, we have Ninetales and Quillfish. These are both highly respectable Pokemon. I think they're both pretty good against my team. They're just not going to take the game by themselves. They are there to support the other team. Ninetales does that with Veil, Quillfish does that with Spikes and Pivoting and Intimidate. But I do think they're both threats. Up to 7, we have Annihilate. It's Annihilate, we've gone over it. Rage Fist, Rage Fist, Rage Fist. Next, Amoonguss and Arcanine. They're both just really solid. They both have great typings against my team. They're really annoying for me to deal with. And I think there's basically no matchup I can bring that makes them bad. I think they're just always good. And then in 9, Landorus Incarnate. It makes sense. It's my opponent's big threat. And it's a big threat. And I'm worried about it. And specifically, I'm worried that it's going to click Sludge Wave 6 times and get 6 KOs. That's the end of day 2. Tomorrow, we'll be looking at my own team and how I can respond to these threats. See you then. So, the theme of today is breaking the enemy. Now, it's not going to be easy because they do have a pretty good defensive team. They drafted these defensive Pokemon very early in their draft, right? They started with Amoonguss, they take Quagsire and Quillfish. So they have thought this out, and it does seem like it's going to be tricky for me to get through. But I have some options, as we'll see. So, starting strong, Sneasler, the team delinquent. Look at that shifty, ugly mess of a Pokemon. He is going to do some nonsense. Specifically, he can click Diaclaw and start the casino going. We can randomly put things to sleep. We can poison everything. We can take Poison Touch, which sounds pretty good because I'm faster than everything anyway. We can take Poison Touch and just poison his whole team. We do have the Grassy Unburden option 2. Take Rillaboom, Grassy Terrain, Grassy Seed. Try to sweep. We're just fast and strong. Faster than his whole team. Strong enough to kill a bunch of things. However, they just have so many resistances to fighting and poison. I can't get through Landorus at all. and I can thud into Rocky Helmet on Pokemon like Amoonguss and just get chipped down. I just don't think I'm sweeping with Sneasler. I think I can do some good damage and apply some zany statuses, but Sneasler's not my guy for clearing house. What am I going to give him? Well, Grassy Seed is an option. I was thinking Choice Band, though, and just hit as hard and as fast as I can. Just try to overcome those resistances by sheer power and Dire Claw cheese. So let's look at what I mean on the type chart. Fighting and Poison just looks horrible. We beat only Ninetales without prediction, and Kingambit and Arcanine with prediction. We can hit these 4 neutrally, but these are all the kind of bad ones, and then Quillfish, Annihilate, and Landorus resist both of our stabs, which is more than is okay for a sweeper like this guy. And we do have a lot of coverage options, but they're all kind of mid, with the exception of Acrobatics. Acrobatics is good. It locks us into a consumable item, but we kind of want that anyway with Unburden. And it does let us hit Annihilate, which otherwise just switches in forever, and Amoonguss, which also switches in forever. So Acrobatics is looking pretty good. But I'm also happy just to click Dire Claw on those Pokemon and fish for poison. I guess in Amoonguss I'm fishing for sleep. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out when we get more in depth, but the typing is where Sneasler is just not looking that good offensively. The other idea I had is a Toxicorp set, right? We can run Poison Touch, click Fake Out, and then we can fling or switcheroo the Toxicorp and guarantee poison something. Specifically, Landorus and Annihilate really hate being poisoned. If I can put them on a timer and then accelerate that timer with Fake Out, I think I'm in a good spot. I think that's worth a team slot. But there's a lot of different gimmicks I can do with Sneasler, and I'm not convinced on any one of them at this point. I'm redacting my tech options for my own Pokemon because I don't want to leak prep if I don't have to. So overall, I give Sneasler a 6 out of 10. It's good. It's solid. I just don't think it's taken the game by itself. Moving on, Rillaboom. Rillaboom is the team ape. Every team needs an ape, and we have a good one. Look at him. He's going to set the grassy terrain for us. What does he do? Well, grassy terrain, mostly. But his power is nothing to sneeze at. The Woodhammer hits really hard. Grassy terrain hits pretty hard for a priority move. And even the U-turn when we pivot is strong enough to leave a dent. Weaknesses? Well, he's one of my mini grass types. And all of our problems are with the types that beat grass. So he's weak to fire, which we don't like. He's weak to ice and poison and flying. The poor Rillaboom is going to be destroyed by the enemy's team building phase. He also hates Rocky Helmet, specifically Amoonguss. Amoonguss can switch in infinitely because it's got Regenerator and it resists grass. And every time it switches in, if I hit it, I take chip damage. It's not so good. I just get worn down. Even with the grassy terrain healing, like, it's fine, but it's not great. Expected items, yeah, I don't know. Choice Band is the most likely. Okay, so how do we look offensively? Well, we hit 2 Pokemon super effectively, Quagsire and Sandslash, but they're both really bad against my team, so they probably won't even be in the game. We hit 5 Pokemon neutrally, and there's 3 that we can't even hurt. It's not good. Like mono grass coverage on a team where my enemy is prepped for grass is not good. Especially this guy with 2 poisons and best Pokemon's a flying type. Yeah, I'm not loving it. But we do have knockoff, which is effective against nothing. But that's not really why we run knockoff. It does make progress. It is nice. We've got U-turn, which is super effective against nothing. And then, in slightly more positive news, we do have fighting and ground type coverage, which can hit Kingambit and Arcanine, which is useful. It's not amazing, though. It's not looking amazing for Rillaboom. Still, he hits hard, and he sets the terrain, and the terrain benefits me a lot. So, I'm giving him a 7 out of 10, but he's mostly riding on the synergy. I think, standalone, if it weren't for other Pokemon benefiting from the grassy terrain, I'd probably only give him a 5 or a 6. Ursaluna's next, and Ursaluna is a very interesting one. I'm glad I drafted it because it's a fun one to use. Its job is to wall break, do 1,000,000 damage with Blood Moon, and maybe to sweep under Trick Room. So Blood Moon is 140 base power. It's crazy. Okay, we can't use it twice in a row, but that doesn't matter if we one-shot things. We can do a few different things. We can give it upfront damage, Specs Life Orb. We can also give it setup with Calm Mind and Moonlight to heal. It synergizes nicely with Hatterene. We can Trick Room, we can even Healing Wish to it. But it does have problems. It's very predictable. Once you've used Blood Moon, you can't use it again. And it's very slow. So it can get kind of bullied around. It's the same problem that regular Ursaluna has, but I don't have to run a Flame Orb, so I'm not a timer. I mean, it's much better than regular Ursaluna, but it shares a similar kind of weaknesses. Expected items, well, we can either give it more bulky items and do the sweeping set, or we can do some upfront damage items. How does the typing look? Pretty great, actually. We get Quillfish super effectively, always. We had Arcanine and Kingambit with predictions. These two have a really interesting overlap of resistances and weaknesses. It seems like whenever I'm hitting Kingambit, I'm also hitting Arcanine. I mean, it's just fighting in ground, but those are really common coverage types. It's kind of nice. It lets me control these two scary things with one move slot. Anyway, everything else we hit neutrally. If we look at the resistances to normal that the opponent has, they've got Kingambit and Arcanine, which both get destroyed by Earth Power, and they've got Annihilate. And Annihilate isn't a normal resist at all, because I've got Mind's Eye. So in fact, they don't really have a switch in. Like, Ursaluna looks really scary for them. The combination of normal and ground is just hard to deal with their team. I've also got coverage options. Fairy's okay, I can run Moonblast to hit Annihilate, but I probably don't need it because Super Effective Moonblast is barely stronger than Stab Blood Moon. It's weaker. Super Effective Moonblast is weaker than Stab Blood Moon. Now I can use it every turn, but is it worth a move slot? Maybe not. Okay, so here's my predicted set. This is the setup variation. I'm not sure what I'll go with at this point, but something like this. I give it an 8 out of 10. As future Henry, looking back, I should have rated this higher, right? 8 is actually low. But at the time, I didn't quite see just how scary Blood Moon is for their team. Hatterene is next. Its job is hazard control. It can do other things, but its main job is to just deter the opponent from clicking Stealth Rocks or clicking Spikes, even from clicking Toxic. And that's thanks to Magic Bounce. Magic Bounce is why we have Hatterene. It's a really good ability, especially combined with Hatterene's really high special attack stat. So it's hard to deal with Hatterene because you can't poison it, so it starts to set up. You have to kill it with damaging moves. You can't like work your way around it. It'll bounce everything back. And Calm Mind plus Draining Kiss is pretty gross. It also has this supporting power of Trick Room and Healing Wish, which, as I said, is great with Ursaluna. Problems, it's very slow. I mean, good under Trick Room, but Trick Room isn't that good in singles. It doesn't have reliable recovery. If they have a Fairy Resist, and Draining Kiss isn't healing that much. And it is so slow that it's going to take damage. And it can't really hurt Poison and Steel types. It's got coverage, but it's weak. Yeah, it does have problems. Expected items, similar to Blood Moon, really. We either run Leftovers and try to set up, or Choice Specs and just try to hurt something. How do we look from a coverage angle? Well, Psychic and Fairy looks pretty good. Their team is weak to Psychic, I would say, with 1 immunity and 3 weaknesses. So we hit 3 Pokemon super effectively, and we hit everything else neutrally. Amazing, right? Good for Hatterene. It does not look too bad at all. It's got good coverage options too. We can take Grass, Giga Drain to hit Sandslash and Quagsire. I'm not so worried about hitting Sandslash and Quagsire though. I think they're basically garbage. I shouldn't be so mean to Quagsire. I think Sandslash is garbage. I think Quagsire has a niche, but I don't need Hatterene to handle it. I'm sorry, Quagsire. I love you. You're not that bad. I shouldn't lump you in with vermin like Sandslash. Mystical Fire is probably where I want to go. Hits Ninetales and Kingambit. It's good. Good coverage. That's what Hatterene usually runs. Leaving me with a set that looks something like this. It's all very familiar. How do I rate it? Well, I rate it 5 out of 10, and the reason is because of its defensive profile. I think offensively it's really good, but defensively it's weak to poison, and they're going to be spamming poison-type moves. If they didn't have a Landorus that was going to be clicking Sludge Wave every 10 seconds, and an Annihilate that's going to click Gunk Shot, this would be way higher. But because it gets outsped by everything, and because everything is using poison-type moves, I think it's going to get worn down too much. It's still good, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's great. Okay, now to Ogerpon. And Ogerpon, the more I thought about it, the greater it seemed. Spikes just seem so good against their team. They've got all these grounded Pokemon that hate being chipped, and Ogerpon can put spikes up. And the difference between Annihilate being able to switch in forever and being able to switch in 8 times is actually massive, because every time we wear it down, we get it that much closer to being able to be OHKO'd, and I need to be able to punish it from just coming in and taking U-turns to boost its Rage Fist. Also, we have this Encore thing, where if they try to set up on me, and I read them right, I can Encore them into a setup move and then set up myself, which is really good against Annihilate, and pretty good against everything on his team, because Ogerpon is faster than everything on his team. I can also, as a kicker, crit Ivy Cudgel through Aurora Veil with the high crit chance, which is not so unlikely. I mean, the crit chance is pretty dumb. I think it's 1 in 8, and I mean, I can spam it against Ninetales. Like I like clicking it anyway, but it just gives me this like extra out in a bunch of dodgy situations. Weaknesses, well, the same grass type problem. Hates poison, hates flying. Those are my problem types. It also kind of hates status. I might have overblown this a bit. It basically hates poison and paralysis. It's immune to Spore, and it's immune to Will-O-Wisp. Poison and paralysis both totally ruin its whole vibe, you know? It also can't hurt fire types, but luckily, their fire type, Arcanine, is also a rock type, so it doesn't actually resist grass. So I can hurt Arcanine, just not most fire types. Expected items, well, it has to wear the mask. It's never taken that mask off. It's not allowed. How does the typing look? How does the coverage look? Pretty good. Pretty good. We hit 2 things just guaranteed, 3 more with predictions, and everything else neutrally. This is that same pattern we were seeing on their team for Pokemon like Arcanine, but now it's on my team. They struggle to switch into my Ogerpon. I'm very happy. Moreover, it's got some pretty useful coverage. It's got Fighting, which quadruple hits Kingambit and hits Arcanine. It's got Ground, which hits Kingambit, Arcanine, and Quillfish. And it's got Fairy to hit Annihilate. It's going to have a move slot problem. It's got so many moves at once. The trickiest part of Ogerpon is going to be deciding which 4 moves to bring, because I'm always going to be sacrificing something. I predict something like this. I want Spikes, I want Spiky Shield, I want Ivy Cudgel, I want Woodhammer. I probably also want Encore and Swords Dance and U-Turn. I give it a 9 out of 10. It would be a 10 out of 10 if I could run 8 moves. But with only 4, there's always going to be some hole in what it can do. And the challenge for me is going to be figuring out which holes I can compensate for with other Pokemon, and which holes I need Ogerpon specifically to patch up. Okay, Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz is quite exciting. It's a wall and a pivot, and you've never seen Overcoat so good. It blocks Spore, so if Amoonguss is clicking Spore, I can just switch Mandibuzz in. And Amoonguss can't really do much to Mandibuzz. It could run Toxic, and Toxic my Mandibuzz, and that would really suck. But running Toxic and Spore feels bad, and Spore is so good, and if it doesn't have Spore, Sneasler ruins it. So I like it. And then I can defog, of course. I don't want them to have hazards up, so I want defog. And, crucially, Toxic plus Roost will stall out Landorus Incarnate. I'm immune to ground. I'm neutrally hit by Sludge Wave. If I invest in special defense, I do more healing than it does damage, and I win eventually. Which is nice because I don't have any other out to that Pokemon. Weaknesses, well, it's passive. If they have something with crazy setup, I can Toxic Kick and I kind of bounce around, but it'll just set up on me. It hates being poisoned, and it hates Stealth Rocks. So any kind of like passive damage that it can take keep taking over and over will cripple its ability to act as a defensive check to a bunch of things. So I probably give it leftovers or heavy-duty boots. How does its typing look offensively? Well, it doesn't matter that much because I'm using this defensively, but it's okay. It hits 7 things neutrally, a couple of things that are effective. It can't hit King Gambit. I'm not too worried about this. I could give it Heat Wave, but I'm never clicking Heat Wave. It's a stall Pokemon. So my prototype set looks something like this. Toxic Roost, U-Turn, Knockoff. I can run Knockoff or Foul Play. They both have pros and cons. And I can run Defog instead of something, maybe Defog instead of U-Turn. There's options, but it's going to look something like this. Overall, I give it an 8 out of 10. It checks Landorus, and I need a Landorus check desperately. Okay, moving into the lower point Pokemon on my team. Let's have a look at Lantern. It's a pivot. That's what it's going to do. It can flip turn or volt switch. It's a pivot. It also has Water Absorb and Volt Absorb, but I don't think either of them are going to be that relevant. The only thing is Water Absorb will stop Quillfish being able to flip turn out, and then I can discharge it. And that's useful, but it's nothing to write home about. But it does Ice Beam. It's one of my few Pokemon with Ice-type moves, and if I can hit Lando with an Ice Beam, it'll die. The problem is, it doesn't have recovery, it's a bit weak, and it's just generally a fish. Like, it doesn't have the potency of these really strong Pokemon. What am I going to give it? Some kind of defensive item. I'm not aiming to kill a bunch of things in one hit, except for maybe Landorus, but that's because of a 4 times weakness. There's an ant on my arm. Hello? What are you doing, Mr. Ant? I gotta give you... I'm recording a video, Ant. You gotta go. Here, come. Hey. Okay, you've fallen off. Sorry, that was the ant break. If you're an ant, remember to like and subscribe because I'm a friend, and here's my proof. Like I could have hurt that ant, but I didn't. I wished it on its way. And so, yeah, you should shower me with your praise and affection. Thank you. Anyway, water and electric are the types of Lantern, and it's okay. A lot of things that I'm hitting super effectively, but Quagsire and Amoonguss stonewall me. I mean, Quagsire, as I say, I can't get through, and Amoonguss is pretty annoying too. Now, I can Terra Flying to hit Amoonguss and Annihilate with Terra Blast. It's interesting. I don't know how strong it is. It also makes me immune to ground, which turns the tables on Landorus. So that's quite enticing. I've also got Terra Steel to do like a freaky, hey, I one-shot your Ninetales with a quadruple effect of Steel-type Terra Blast. That's like a meme, but if I did pull it off, it would be so funny. And then Ice Beam, of course. And Ice Beam is what I'm really aiming for. So, yeah, something like this. Flip Turn, Scold, Ice Beam, probably Discharge, maybe Terra Blast. Try to bait the Landorus and then one-shot it. Overall, though, 4 out of 10. Like, Quagsire just shuts it down so terribly. And I don't really need it for its defensive properties. Comfey, it's bad. It's pretty bad. We know what it does, priority stuff. But it's just too weak in this case. If we look at the type chart, it's hitting only Annihilate super effectively. There's 3 Pokemon it can't hurt. Its coverage barely helps. I mean, the set is something like this, right? Calm Mind plus damaging moves plus Leech Seed or Encore. But I'm giving it a 3. I don't expect Comfey to be that good. Next we have Go-Goat. And Go-Goat, unlike Comfey, I think has potential. It's weird. It's a weird Pokemon that no one has ever used in all of history. I had to check out what its moves were because, I mean, look at this thing. It's clearly meant to be a motorbike and not a battling Pokemon. But we don't get to choose the world we live in, do we, Go-Goat? So, it can kind of function as a late game cleaner with Bulk Up and Horn Leech. It's got Roar, which I quite like because phasing's a bit hard to come by on my team. And it's got Leech Seed, and interestingly, it hardwalls Amoonguss if I Terra Steel. Because with Sap Sipper, I'm immune to Grass, I'm immune to Spore, and I'm immune to Poison with the Steel type. So Amoonguss is shut out. Maybe it can foul play me if it's running that, but that's not that strong. The problem is I don't do much back either. I can run Zen Headbutt to hit it super effectively, but it's a bad move. But maybe it doesn't matter if I'm only doing like 3% per turn with Hornleech to Amoonguss, if it's doing 0% back, and eventually I'll win because he's the GOAT or something. Problems, well, before I Terra, it's another grass type. I'm Terraing pretty quick with this. I mean, I need to Terra for this to be usable, I think. The coverage is not that great, and there's a reason Go-Go's ZU. It's just not... It just doesn't have the juice, you know? But let's have a look at its typing. It's the same as Rillaboom, so this will be familiar. We've got the 3 Pokemon that we can't hit. We've got Quagsire and Sandslash that we can, but those 2 are kind of bad. We can Terra Water to hit Arcanine, it's okay, but I think we're Terraing Steel. We've got some coverage options. We've got the ground and the fighting for Arcanine and Kingambit. That's okay. I mean, I don't love it. But I think if we're using it, we're just using it because it destroys Amoonguss. We say, we hate Amoonguss. We're going to make Amoonguss's life miserable. That's why it's here. I give it a 5 out of 10. This is kind of like my opponent's Noctowl, where I think Go-Goat's pretty bad, but if there's any matchup where it might be good, this one is a candidate. This is a matchup where, okay, maybe this is Go-Goat's time to shine. Finally, we have Volbeat. Its job is Disruptor. The things that make it so strong as a Pokemon are that trademark glare, that look of disappointment, of palpable resignation that you can see in Volbeat's eyes. There's the disappointment that it feels towards you, and towards me, and towards the world, and towards the fact that I spelt disappointment wrong on this slide. And finally, there's the fact that it's a bit of a prankster and a joker. Sometimes you'll wake up and you'll go downstairs and Volbeat will have shuffled your spoons or moved your couch 10 feet up and then 10 feet back down so that it's staying almost exactly where it started. Or is it? In terms of counterplay to these terrifying traits, well, everything. Every single possible thing in the entire universe exists as counterplay to Volbeat. So, for example, if I look at my desk, I have a floss pick. That would counter Volbeat. I've got a hook. This counters Volbeat. I've got some ginger beer. Ginger beer destroys Volbeat. I've got a fossilized Brachiosaur. That counters Volbeat. Everything you can possibly imagine, every object that's in your field of view right now, destroys Volbeat to the party. What does it do? Nothing. It's bad. What am I going to give it? It doesn't matter because it's bad. 1 out of 10, and he's lucky I gave him a 1. How do the rankings shape up overall? Well, here's Volbeat in 1, here's Comfey in 3, here's Lantern in 4, Hatterene and Go-Goat taking 5, Sneasler in 6, Rillaboom in 7, Mandibuzz and Ursaluna in 8, and Ogerpon in 9. I'm not too disappointed with this. I think I have good options. I think my opponent good options. It's going to be an interesting match. I think there's a lot of game to be had in the team builder. When we get into battle, who knows what will happen. I'm clicking Diaclaw. But this feels very interesting. It feels very fair. And I really enjoyed getting to know these guys over the course of this intense week of study. Tomorrow, Day 4, I will be diving even deeper into the minutiae, the subtle contours of every amalgamation of tempo and lines and movesets and varieties and all this kinds of things. Why don't you join me in The Matrix? Here in The Matrix, we're concerned with every possible matchup that could ever occur in the battle between my team and the opponent's team in this particular draft league. We have a nice grid, or a matrix. and we're going to populate it with information about what happens in these matchups. Specifically, first of all, I'm interested in tempo. Now, some of you watching, if there's anyone watching, some of you imaginary people watching will understand what tempo is, and you won't need a recap, but if there's anyone who isn't, I'll just go over it. So, tempo is a concept that's used in a bunch of different games. I think it started with chess, or at least the first time I encountered it was with chess. And in chess, the idea of tempo is there's usually one player who has the initiative in a Roll20 kind of way. They're making the offensive move and the other person is having to defend. So in chess, white, because they go first, starts with a tempo. And there are things you can do to gain tempo in chess. You can sacrifice a piece, make your opponent use a move taking it, and then you kind of gain a tempo. You can do something else. Or you capture back and you reset the tempo. In chess, what you want to do is kind of accumulate tempo over time, get further and further ahead of your opponent so that your pieces are just more able to do things. They're in the right place where they need to be. And you can end up in a situation where your opponent needs 5 or 6 moves to catch up to where you are. I also play a game called Teamfight Tactics, which also features tempo very heavily. But what tempo means in that case is slightly different. In Teamfight Tactics, tempo is a kind of conceptual idea of the average strength of your opponents, where the way you gain tempo is by spending resources. So I can store up gold for my economy for later and lose tempo, or I can spend it to improve my board and gain tempo. And we say that the lobby as a whole has a tempo, and you are ahead of tempo if you're stronger than the lobby, and you're behind tempo if you're weaker. So it's kind of nebulous and it's conceptual, and it doesn't refer to a particular stat in the games or a tangible thing. But what does it refer to in a Pokemon sense? Well, the easiest way to think about it is if you have a matchup, say you have Landorus and Sneasler fighting each other, who has to switch out and who can stay in? The answer is Sneasler's got to go, right? Because Landorus resists both of its moves, and Sneasler's weak to earth power, and it will die. So Sneasler, if it wants to stay alive, has to switch out. Now, it has those two options, right? You can switch out and go into something that beats Landorus, or you can die and go into something that beats Landorus. You've got your Pokemon that beats Landorus in, you have acquired the tempo from the Landorus. However, there's a cost, right? The Landorus got to hit you with a move, or knock out your Sneasler. So we would say that Landorus started with the tempo, or the Landorus player started with the tempo, but when the Sneasler switched, the Sneasler player gained the tempo. That's the general idea. That's what we're going to be looking at. Let's get into it. So with that out of the way, let's have a look at the times against each of my opponent's Pokemon where I have tempo. So first of all, Landorus. I have tempo with Mandibuzz. If I have Mandibuzz in against Landorus and they're both on full health, Mandibuzz wins. Mandibuzz can tank Sludge Waves and then Roost Up and Toxic. Landorus loses 1v1, so it has to switch. So I have tempo and I get to make some kind of progress. With Lantern, I have tempo with the caveat that I Terrestrialize. I can Terra Flying, dodge the Earth Power, and then kill with Ice Beam. And with Ogerpon, I've got a grass symbol there because under grassy terrain, Woodhammer Oko's Landorus. However, if I don't have the grassy terrain, Landorus will survive the Woodhammer and then Oko Ogerpon back with Sludge Wave. So it's a tenuous kind of tempo. And what you'll see is that when we talk about Pokemon in a vacuum like this, it's all well and good to say this guy beats this guy. But as the match goes on, Pokemon start to take chip damage, they get worn down, they get statused. These tempo relationships can flip in crazy ways. So here I'm just looking at when they're on 100% health. And right now, just in a neutral scenario, they're both in, they're looking at each other. Who has the temper? Well, for Amoonguss, we have a similar situation to Landorus. Again, Ogerpon and Mandibuzz are my most solid counters. As I've mentioned, I can terrestrialize Gogoat to totally shut down Amoonguss. It requires committing a terror, but it definitely would work. I also have these two, Sneasler and Hatterene, who have dubious relationships. Hatterene and Amoonguss are both super effective against each other. They can both EV to survive each other's hits or EV to kill each other. They can speed creep each other. It's just very nebulous as to who wins, and it's going to be very dependent on how we've EV'd them. Sneasler's a bit different. Sneasler is Dire Claw RNG. If I can get the sleep or the paralysis, I'm looking good. Because Amoonguss can't really hurt Sneasler, at least not quickly. But Sneasler can't hurt Amoonguss that badly either, and it will take Rocky Helmet damage. But I can just keep clicking Dire Claw until I get lucky and something happens. But I might not get lucky, so again it's very tenuous. Thankfully, Mandibuzz is just looking like a champion, right? Switches into Spore, Amoonguss can't really hurt it. Thank you, Mandibuzz. Okay, Ninetales. Ninetales is looking better. It's weak to Sneasler. Sneasler does a good job of controlling it, and Rillaboom can just bonk it with Grassy Glide. Now, Rillaboom is a bit tenuous. It survives a Blizzard, but not on much health. But I'm okay against Ninetales, and either of my Terra Captains, if I terrestrialize them Steel, beat Ninetales easily. What about Arcanine? Well, again, Sneasler is very good against it. This time, Ursaluna also beats it, and Ogerpon, again, comes out on top. So Ogerpon's looking really nice. Now that I'm kind of really breaking it down, I'm thinking, wow, Ogerpon, like, it's looking really good. And Lantern, again, is looking good too. How about Annihilate? Well, Annihilate looks pretty tricky. Mandibuzz again, or Comfey, but Comfey is bad against everything else. So I think it's going to have to be Mandibuzz that I use against Annihilate. But Mandibuzz has a lot of jobs, right? If Mandibuzz is my switch into Landorus, Amoonguss, and Annihilate, then I might be relying on one Vulture to take down actually half of my opponent's team. Or at least control the pace of the battle against half of my opponent's team. So this is the general setup. Now if we look at points, here they are. Sneasler and Ogerpon doing well, Mandibuzz doing well, Lantern doing well. If we include the negative matchups and see how they tally up, then my opponent's whole team looks pretty strong, but Annihilate especially looks really hard to deal with. Okay, what about my opponent's weaker Pokemon? Well, Kingambit is really interesting. As I've said, it's weak to Sneasler and Ursaluna, and they're my two best Pokemon, but it beats everything else. So it's very binary. I can't tell if that makes it really strong or really weak, but time will tell. Quillfish loses to a lot of things. I'm not too worried about Quillfish. Quagsire loses to everything except Lantern. Now, granted, it destroys Lantern, but I don't think that's enough of a niche. Sandslash loses to basically everything. It does beat Sneasler, because it's a ground type and it can hit Sneasler, but I don't think that saves it. And then, what the heck's going on with Noctowl? Hang on. Only Lantern beats it? It beats everything else? Yeah, so I don't think that Noctowl is actually that good. It's just a artifact of the way I've calculated this, and I think next week I'm going to change it a bit, because I calculated Specs Hurricane as Noctowl's damaging move, and what has ended up happening is that Noctowl is just bulky enough to survive a bunch of hits from these guys, and then it kills with Specs Hurricane in return, things like Rillaboom and Ogerpon. Thing is, if it Specs, it's getting locked in, and also Hurricane has a 70% accuracy, so it's just missing a bunch of the time. And it might be winning, but it's taking like 80-90% of its health, which means the next Pokemon to come in will just kill it. So I'm saying that it's beating 9 out of 10 of my Pokemon, but there's a lot of caveats that aren't captured in the matrix, and that's why we have to take this with a grain of salt. So here are the final scores from both slides of how many winning matchups, how many times each of these Pokemon have a positive tempo. And we see that Sneasler is on top. Sneasler has 8 out of 10. Wow, what the heck? Sneasler. Amazing. I think I must have underestimated it when I was in the more conceptual phase of this. I'm seeing that Rillaboom only has 3, and I'm like, have I been overrating Rillaboom? It doesn't actually seem that good. Ursaluna looks good, Ogerpon looks good, Lantern's looking pretty good. Mandibuzz is checking a bunch of things that nothing else can check, so Mandibuzz is definitely coming onto my final team. How about the losing? Well, Noctowl is cleaning up, Kingambit's doing really well, but they both have those caveats that I've mentioned. Okay, so the next step is to think about progress. So one aspect of tempo is forcing your opponent to switch, or kind of winning the matchup. The other aspect is, what can you do once you've gained a tempo? So your opponent, who's behind on tempo, is going to make a switch to get the tempo back. And that's your chance to make some kind of progress against them. Now, importantly, you're not going to be making progress against the Pokemon that you beat. So say I have Rillaboom in against Quagsire. Well, I have the tempo, because Rillaboom beats Quagsire. However, whatever progress I want to make, I'm not going to make it against Quagsire, because they're going to switch. So, what I'm interested in is, what can I do with Rillaboom against whatever my opponent switches in to beat me? And so, on this slide, I've taken just my losing matchups, and I'm going to see what happens if I get a free turn against them. Importantly, there are a few kind of categories of things I might want to do. The first is damage, so I might just want to hit something with a damaging move, and the more I can do, the better. I mean, pretty straightforward. The second is the whole plethora of progress-making moves that are available. So there's moves like Trick, and Encore, and Knockoff, that sort of disrupt the opponent. There's status moves, Toxic Will-O-Wisp. There's Hazards, Spike, Stealth Rock. There's a whole bunch of other random things that Pokemon can do. Set screens, set weather, set terrain, all this stuff. Kinds of progress. And the other thing you can do is pivot. Use U-turn, use Dry Baton Pass, whatever you like. And what that does is it keeps your tempo. So you had tempo, your opponent switched to gain tempo, but because switching happens before attacking, you get to switch and gain tempo again, which is nice, because maybe there wasn't much progress you could make with your tempo before, but now they've switched, and now, this new matchup, you can make even more progress. That's the idea. With all that said, let's have a look, shall we? I'll go ally by ally, so we'll look at Sneasler first. So these bubbles represent how much I'm going to deal when they switch into me. And you can see that it's quite a lot, with the exception of Quillfish. So if Quagsire comes in, well, I can do 56% of its health with close combat, and that'll flip the matchup. I can just click it again, and Quagsire dies. So that seems pretty good, right? Noctowl took 84%. Noctowl might beat Sneasler in a strict 1v1 in the simulations, but it's never switching in. It's going to get annihilated. And if it ever gets chipped at all, it's going to get annihilated. So of these, only Quillfish actually reliably deals with Sneasler. Quillfish is immune to poisoning, and it resists both of Sneasler's attacks, and it's got Intimidate. It just shuts Sneasler down, which is to its credit, you know. I was really being mean to Quillfish when I learned that it couldn't use Eviolite, and I stand by what I said, Quillfish. Anyway, Ursaluna. Well, the only thing here that it was losing to was Noctowl, and it's gonna annihilate Noctowl with its strong moves. How about Rillaboom? Same thing. Kingambit only takes 43, so maybe Kingambit counters it, but Quillfish and Noctowl are getting smacked around. Same with Ogerpon. Everything that beats it gets smacked around by switching in. Mandibuzz is not so great, so its options are Knock Off, Foul Play for probably pitiful damage, or U-turn. In practice, I'm either going to be knocking off or U-turning. Both are good, but they're not game-winning. They're just small steps towards eventual victory. But they're not bad either. Hatterene, it's looking a bit rough here. Can't do half health to Noctowl or Kingambit. And Comfey looks miserable. Look at this. I mean, when Comfey loses, it loses hard. I don't think there's a world where Comfey is usable. Lantern too. I mean, when Lantern loses, Quagsire, no shot, but Kingambit, it can't really hurt either. It's not looking so good. Go-Goat, it's tenuous. It does beat Sandslash, but Noctowl and Kingambit, not really. The saving grace is it can leech seed things on the Switch, which is nice. But it's no Rillaboom, it's no Ogerpon, it's no Sneasler, that's for sure. And then Volbeat, I don't know. It can paralyze or pivot, but that's all it's ever going to be doing, because it has negative tempo against everything. Cool. Onto the stronger Pokemon. How does Sneasler go? Well, really good, it turns out. Half of Amoonguss' health clean, more than half of Annihilate's with acrobatics. And Landorus is a bit rough, but at least you can roll the dice on Diaclaw. Maybe get a poison, maybe get a sleep. If you get a sleep, I mean, you're over the moon, right? Maybe you just win. It's a really stupid move. If you get to sleep, you have to win and then immediately beg forgiveness from your opponent, because it shouldn't be like that, man. But I don't make the rules, Sneasler does. Ursaluna also looks great. It kills Landorus instantly, way more than half of Annihilate's health, way more than half of Amoonguss's, and it's a roll to kill Ninetales outright. Same with Rillaboom. It just straight kills 3 of them. Amoonguss is the problem, though. I can knock it off, that's what the dark type symbol means, but I'm not doing meaningful damage. Amoonguss kind of stonewalls Rillaboom. If my opponent didn't have Amoonguss, Rillaboom would be so much more appealing, but as it is, I'm not sold on the ape. Okay, Ogerpon looks great, 82% to Annihilate. Mandibuzz, again, it's not doing damage, it's kind of disrupting, toxic, knockoff, U-turn, this kind of stuff. Hatterene looks good here. I mean, those are big numbers. Nothing in this upper echelon like switching into a Psychic. Comfey looks miserable, again. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, Comfey's out. Like, Comfey, you gotta do... You can do 6% to Amoonguss, are you serious? 6%? I mean, it's pathetic. Lantern's alright. It's fine. The Amoonguss hits an Ice Beam. It's okay, but it's not thrilling me. And then Go-Goat's pretty bad. Middling damage. You can Leech Seed, but they can just switch. And then Volbeat's a meme. We love you, Volbeat. You're not invited. Okay, where do we stand? Well, Ogerpon and Ursaluna don't have switch-ins, which is great. Those two are looking terrifying. Sneasler barely has switch-ins, but Quillfish can do it. And it's not quite as dominating as the other people. It's more reliant on Diaclaw. Otherwise, I mean, Hatterene looks pretty good with advantage. And then Mandibuzz, the most likely thing is I use Mandibuzz as a pivot to bring in something with a stronger progress-making move. We're almost done. We've got one more matrix to deal with, and it's the reverse of this, enemy progress. So what can the enemy do to me when they have disadvantage? So I'm switching into them. They've come in, they get to click something, I'm switching in. What can they do? Start with Landorus. And thankfully I have Mandibuzz, because look at this. It one-shots Ogerpon with Sludge Wave, so I can't switch Ogerpon in. I can switch Lantern in, but what I have to do is have Air Balloon and either switch it in on the Earth Power, so that he has to spend a move breaking my Air Balloon, or switch it in on the Sludge Wave and then Terraflying, or have already Terraflying. In any case, I can switch in if I'm a flying type or otherwise elevated. But it's dodgy, But Mandibuzz, 34%, I heal 50 with Roost. He can't 2-hit me if I have leftovers. He can't even 3-hit me if I have leftovers. I mean, thank you, Mandibuzz. We haven't even used you yet, but you're a champion. How about Amoonguss? Well, it's okay. Something that I'm not sure if it's confusing or intuitive. I've reversed the colors for the enemy. So red is still bad and green is still good, but the numbers are backwards. So 15 for Amoonguss means it's doing 15% of Mandibuzz's health, which is not much. Mandibuzz can just switch into Amoonguss forever. Barring poisoning from Sludge Bomb, but I have a secret tech for that. Amoonguss does do 58% of Ogerpon's health, which is a lot. And Go-Goat needs Terror, otherwise Amoonguss beats it. So Mandibuzz again is the hero of the day. Have a look at Ninetales. Well, Ninetales is pretty strong. It straight KOs Sneasler and Rillaboom with Blizzard. It does good damage to Ogerpon. And Lantern, nothing to Terra Steel Go-Goat, but I've committed the Terror. It's a bit hard to switch in on. Arcanine is brutal. Look at this. Every losing matchup, it cleans up with its Choice Banded set. I mean, it one-shots Sneasler with Flare Blitz, one-shots Ogerpon with Head Smash, one-shots Lantern with Head Smash, and does 71% of Ursaluna's health with Close Combat. This thing is a terror. And then finally, Annihilate. So, Annihilate's not too bad. My Pokemon that beat it do beat it. 29% is not too much for Mandibuzz, and I can Toxic it and force it out. I'm lucky I have Mandibuzz, is all I'm thinking. So, looking at the enemy's points, when they have a free turn, Arcanine has no switches. Arcanine is a major problem. And all the others are pretty big problems too. But that Arcanine particularly looks terrifying. Finally, the weaker Pokemon. Kingambit does a lot of Sneasler's health, but it's pretty weak into Ursaluna. Ursaluna carrying on the Great Tusk tradition of being a ground type that ruins Kingambit's day. Quillfish, a lot of my guys kind of switch in. The worst thing it's going to do usually is chip damage or pivot out with Flip Turn, so I'm not too worried. Quagsire just poisons whatever comes in, which is annoying, and we want to try to avoid it. But it's okay, it can't actually kill anything. Sandslash can hurt things with Gunk Shot, can hit my Rillaboom, can hit my Comfey, it can knock things off, it can click spikes, but it's not that good. And then Noctowl, pretty good damage against Lantern. It's fine. 2 shots. So yeah, that's all of the different relationships. Noctowl, like Arcanine, is at 10 there, but unlike Arcanine, it's only barely at 10, and it's only at 10 if it's on full health. If it takes Chip, that number goes down very quickly. How are my guys doing? Well, Mandibuzz is on top. When the opponent has advantage, Mandibuzz is there to be a safe switch. Ursaluna is pretty good too. Those two are definitely coming to the battle. Lantern and Go-Go are interesting because they both want to Terra, so I can only kind of bring one or the other. I think Go-Go is terrible without Terra, and Lantern is mediocre without Terra. So I could bring both, but I have to Terra Go-Go. Or just sack it and then Terra Lantern. Yeah, and then Sneasler has this problem of, it's strong, it's annoying, but it's kind of hard to get in, and hard to take kills with it. Okay, so how's my scoring? Well, here's the top 4. This is aggregated across the 3 times, the plus tempo, equal tempo, and minus tempo. And Ursaluna's on top, followed closely by Sneasler and Ogerpon, and Lantern. Mandibuzz is behind because it doesn't win matchups with advantage. It has matchups that it still loses even with advantage. But the matchups where it wins very reliably. Looking at my opponent, they've got higher scores than me in general. But I think both Kingambit and Noctowl are being overvalued by the system I've used. So, we're free of the Matrix, and the battle is upon us. On the eve of the battle, I looked back at my old rankings, and I made some new predictions. Here's how they went. Sandslash, I think, has a 1% chance of being brought. 1 in 100 games my opponent brings it, but I think it's terrible. I don't think they're likely to pick it up. Quillfish, I'm giving 20%. I think maybe they get enticed by the poison typing, which is really good, but it has so many problems against my team. It's just not strong enough. Quagsire, I'm giving 30%. I actually think it's worse than Quillfish, but that Lantern matchup is so good that I can see someone picking it just for that. Noctowl, 45%. It's probably not good, but I don't think it's ever been better than here. And if you've drafted Noctowl, now's the time. Now's the time to try to make it work. So I hope they bring Noctowl, because it's fun, and I'm kind of glad to be so weak to it, because I want to see it succeed, because it's an owl, and it's superb. Kingambit at 60%. It's good. My opponent will, I think, more likely than not bring it, but I understand looking at Sneasler and thinking that close combat is too scary. I don't want Kingambit in this game. And they might be right if they think that. Annihilate at 70. I think it's really good. I think it doesn't have enough clear victories to make it an auto pick. It's kind of neutral against everything, but it's still so strong, especially with my 85% Ninetales. I think that the Ice Fairy type is really good against my team, and Aurora Veil is really good. The reason it's not higher is just that as a Pokemon, I don't think it's that strong. I think it enables some really strong things, but I think there's a world where my opponent thinks, I just want the best Pokemon to win. And Ninetales, without all of the support it's giving to the other guys, it's not amazing. I mean, I have lots of ways to deal with it by itself. For the rest, 95% for these two. They do everything my opponent could want. Their typings are great against my team. I'm very scared of both of them. I think I have counterplay to both of them. Well, I've got counterplay to Amoonguss. Arcanine is very, very scary. And then finally, Lando at 99%. There's basically no shot they don't bring it. It's so strong. It's so good. I hate Sludge Wave. I'm terrified. I'll eat a proverbial shoe if Landorus doesn't come along. Not a real shoe, but a proverbial one, like in the Proverbs. Okay, so let's compare my predictions now to my earlier rankings. They haven't changed that much. You can see Ninetales has gone up a bit once I kind of realized how good its typing was. Quillfish has gone down a lot, just because I think that it looks better on paper than it actually is. Quagsire has come up a bit because I looked at the Lantern matchup and I was like, you know, it's got some legs. And apart from that, it stayed pretty similar, I think. Okay, now let's look at my team and see what I intend to do this match. So first off, I'm not bringing Volbeat or Comfey. Neither of them do enough. They're both weak and useless, and they're not welcome for this week. I am definitely bringing these four. I need all four of them. I think if I didn't have any one of them, I would be in trouble. Sneasler, because it deals with Ninetales, and Diaclaw is good and it's so fast. Ogerpon for spikes and encore. Ursaluna for that neutral coverage and wall breaking, and Mandibuzz because it's my only defensive check against like half of their team. These four I'm just undecided on, but I'll get to that when we come to the pregame. How does it stack up? Well, not too far off. I think Rillaboom has dropped a lot. I thought Rillaboom was really good, but it just overlapped too much with Ogerpon. I didn't need the grassy terrain because I'm not planning to use Unburdened Sneasler. So yeah, Rillaboom, it kind of fell off. And then Lantern is up a bit, Go-Goat's up a bit, Sneasler's up a lot. But all in all, vaguely similar. I mean, I identified my three best Pokemon, Ogerpon, Mandibuzz, and Ursaluna. I think they're definitely my three best, with Sneasler in fourth. Cool. And with that, we move into the final day. I want to say a firm, viscous thank you to all of you who have watched this far, because I don't know how long this has been, but it feels like an eternity. My voice is going dry, my hair is going grey, I'm probably wrinkled and withered on the camera, but we gotta see it through, right? I mean, I've recorded this twice now, because the audio was lost, so that probably contributes. But even recording it the once, I felt like I was aging into a sort of shriveled husk of a man. It all ends soon. Join me next time, tomorrow, for the final battle. Okay, the game is afoot. Now they haven't brought Alolan Ninetales, which means I don't need to do the fake out thing with Sneasler, and I could lead with Ogerpon and try to get spikes up. If I lead Ogerpon, can they punish me? Fudge Wave. Yeah. No, I'd rather go for the Sneasler. It's got better general purpose coverage. They've bought Quag, which I like because I didn't bring Lantern, so I'm glad I switched Lantern up for Hatterene. Lantern would have been dead weight against Quagsire. They have the Noctowl, which is pretty scary. Like Noctowl is intimidating against my flying team. Okay, it's the ape. This is kind of the worst case scenario, but it's okay. We click U-turn, they click bulk up, we encore with Ogerpon. Maybe we even get the poison touch poison. Fingers crossed. Poison? No poison. Okay. Ogerpon. Okay. Whew. Like to see that. Okay. And now spikes. Good job, Ogerpon. This is what you were here for. Whew. Whew. Quagsire into Ogerpon, huh? So we go Hatterene here. This is a definite Hatterene. Try to bounce those spikes back. Okay, that's okay. Okay, and now I think we just click Psychic, right? He doesn't have to switch into it. It looks very scary for his team. Their team. They don't have a switch into it. Here comes Noctowl. Okay, if they want the defog, it's going to get them killed. Okay, that's fine. Okay, there goes the owl. But we're certainly not out of the woods. Okay, here's Lando. So this is Mandibuzz's time to shine. Okay, very nice. Good U-turn on their part. Here's Arcanine. Okay, now Arcanine, I don't really have a switch into. Sorry, I can't stay in with Mandibuzz, right? I have to switch out. Question is, who do I switch out to? They don't have King Gambit, so do I need Sneasler? Yeah, I still like it. I could sack Ogerpon? Has Ogerpon kind of done its job? This feels like a pivotal moment. I don't know what he's going to click. Flare Blitz, Head Smash. If he clicks Flare Blitz and I stay in, it's not good for him, but it's not even that bad. I'm going to hope he clicks Head Smash and go Ursaluna. Nice. Nice. Okay, now, I think we just click Blood Moon. Even if we don't kill, we've got Vacuum Wave to finish it off, and there's not really a switch. I don't know if that... Oh, was that Choice Band damage? I don't know. Okay, here's the Amoonguss. We've got the spikes. Bam! Ursaluna. That was good damage. Thank you, my legendary Ursaluna, for the powerful Blood Moon. But we can't click Blood Moon again. I feel like Annihilate kind of comes in here. Yeah. Yeah. I think we just have to go hard Ogerpon every time. Stop the sub nonsense. Click Ivy Cudgel. Okay. So Arcanine Hisui. We're going to do 0% damage to this, but this is the joy sometimes. I don't think there's any way they think my last move is Spiky Shield, because it means I don't have a grass type move. So, here we go. Nice. Okay. Well, okay. but now who do I switch into? Do I still need Hatterene? Probably not. Sack Hatterene. How much is Diaclaw doing? Not enough. Class Combat's like the most obvious switch into... Okay, we'll go Ursaluna, we click Vacuum Wave. It'll hit Annihilate if it comes in. I mean, it still feels pretty scary. The ape. Okay, the Rage Fist is at 250 power. It's gonna get worse. The Lando's still going as well, 100% health. Don't like it. Okay. Here's the ape. I'm doing it. That was a risky play, because if he subbed, I was in a spot of trouble. But I was thinking, I've gone to Ogerpon both times. It looks like I'm going to do it again. Okay, now, you. Mandibuzz every time. Quagsire. Do I outspeed this? The answer is basically yes. Sacco Saluna. Okay, Rocks is annoying. But, now I get a Blood Moon off. Okay. Now, I think we win from this position. I think we win. As we go Sneasler, we click Fake Out. And then we go to Go-Goat. GG. Close game. It was very fun. I don't know. I mean, I was sweating a bit there. I made a few predictions. That Arcanine. I think it was pretty close. I had fun though. GG. GG. Oh my goodness. Ooh. Intense. Whew. And I just started laughing afterwards, because there's a rush you get when you win a game like this. I don't know. I've never put so much effort into one single battle as with this one. You know, I spent hours and hours making these PowerPoint slides and running through the simulations, and you know, there were 8 Pokemon, 4 on each team that didn't even come to the battle. I spent ages like calcing King Gambit in a bunch of different scenarios. I didn't have to worry about King Gambit. There was never a King Gambit, but the Phantom King Gambit haunted me nonetheless. I win. That means I have a victory, and you get to go home and can stop listening to me ramble eventually. But before I let you off the hook, there's a few closing things we should look at. The first is the stats. So Ursaluna goes 4-1, 4 kills, 1 death. Mandibuzz and Hatterene 1-1. These two at 0-0. Go-Go to 0-1. Poor Go-Go. I probably could have saved Go-Go if I'd played the end game a bit better. But it's okay. I'm happy with the results. And these 4 didn't come. So, that's it. Ursaluna's great in the standings. I get a win. And I'm looking forward to next week, where I will be facing Greninja, Tinglu, and Goldengo. I haven't done any prep yet. Still recording this. I've recorded this well into the next week, because it turns out that when you make 119 PowerPoint slides and a 6-hour-long video, and you have to edit it, and you know, you just can't stop talking, and it's all a mess, then it all goes crazy. So if you're here and watching this, then you're probably me, because I think I'm the only one, future editing Henry, who's likely to ever get this far. So the message I have for my future self is hit that bell, subscribe, follow me on Facebook and Vine, and follow me on the streets, and follow my career, and follow your heart, because there are something like, what's the math? There's every decade you live for 3,650 days. So in your lifespan, in my lifespan, I might have, if I'm lucky, another 18,000 days. And if the future me on every one of those 18,000 days subscribes, I'll have 18,000 subscribers. And that's the kind of legacy I could die on. Thank you. See you next time.